2024 sales meeting. So super exciting stuff happening across the board. I know we have lots of things happening in the real estate world as well with the upcoming changes that will go into effect in August, which we're going to spend a lot of time on that today. But let's dig in. We have some really good things that we're excited to talk about for July. As always, I want to remind everyone that knowledge is not power, execution is power. So what we mean by that is that when you are dedicating a piece of your day to attending a meeting or a sales training program, make it a point to be super intentional about writing stuff down that you're going to go execute on. We don't want you to waste any time in your business. So we're going to cover a lot of things today. And so have a pen and paper available and commit to 2 or 3 things that you're going to go execute on as soon as you leave today's program. So we have our monthly, each month we like to acknowledge all of the new and returning Lions of LAER. We want to welcome Julie, who recently joined the results group in Tewksbury. Super excited to have Amy Wally back with us in Sandwich, Josh Jimenez, and Haley Dempsey. Welcome to LAER. As well, we have lots and lots of new family members from Hollowell, Maine. We are so excited to have 34 new team members that joined us last week, just before the 4th of July holiday. The new office is in Hollowell, Maine, which is a little bit north of Portland. And these agents are rock stars. 34 agents. They closed about 250 transactions last year. The brokerage was one of the best in the marketplace, Valley, Harwood, and Bluin. And I can't tell you how excited we are to have all of you with us at LAER. So welcome to our new main office. I recently made a post on our social media stating that over the last 6 months, we've really been focusing on just really improving our systems and our tools and upping our game on some of our marketing pieces. We've been adding several team members across the board to make sure we have all the best staff in all the right places. And this is going to be a massive summer of growth for LAER Realty Partners. Yes, there's change in the industry in general. And to me, I look at it that that's the best time to grow, to embrace the change. There's lots of brokerages out there and real estate agents who really need the tools now more than ever. So we believe we're going to be adding a total throughout the summer of about 160 new team members with a total of 5 offices in New England in the coming days and months at LAER. So once again, welcome to our Hollowell, Maine office, and stay tuned for some additional exciting updates as we expand throughout the summer. Let's take a look at our June sales numbers. Our total for June, we did 227 closings plus 18 rentals. That came out to a total of about $128 million in sales volume. In a few minutes, we're going to compare that to where we are or where we were at this time last year. But not a bad month for June, 227 and 128 million. What we're seeing in all of the markets, and our marketing team can attest to this, is inventory. Inventory over the last 30 days has been coming on quickly. So we're busier than ever. We've actually been increasing our marketing team members. Many of you guys know Elijah from our West Palm Beach office. He's now working directly with Sergio to help us further improve our tools and marketing so we can get our marketing pieces out to you guys even faster, especially in light of all the inventory coming on the market. By the way, just talking about inventory for a second, something to keep in mind is that as inventory starts to accumulate in some of our markets, and we haven't seen accumulation in inventory in some of our markets for quite some time, but just keep it in mind that a lot of stuff is coming on the market because it's going to change the conversations that you'll be having with sellers. We are seeing price reductions in several of our markets, both in New England and Florida. And I think that we're moving into a more normalized market where buyers do have plenty of properties to choose from. So let's take a look at the breakdown. Our Massachusetts offices last month did 181 sales at 108.6 million. Our New Hampshire offices did 15 sales at 12 million in volume, and our Florida offices did 31 sales at 7.4 in volume. Let's take a look at our top agents and teams. By the way, hopefully next month we'll be reporting our main offices as well. But this month, let's take a look at our top agents and teams for each of our marketplaces. So for Massachusetts, top 5 teams by volume, we have O'Connell and Company, Dracut, Button and Company, Burlington, Silver Key Homes, Tingsboro, the Nido team, Weymouth, and Page and Company. Congratulations. Top 5 individuals by volume. We have Matt Winterly in Duxbury, Robin Foley in Northborough, Deb Malone, Chelmsford, Brenda Albert, Leominster, and Tracy Griffin in Plymouth. Top 5 teams by units. We have O'Connell and Company, followed by Silver Key Homes, Button and Company, Nido team, and the hometown team in Athol. Top 5 individuals by units for Massachusetts. Tracy Griffin, Pamela Taylor, Matt Winterly, Brenda Albert, and Corey Gracie. Congratulations. Let's take a look at New Hampshire. So New Hampshire, top 5, we have Platinum Realty Group, Karen Pelletier, Sarah Tollefson. Congrats, Sarah, fairly new to our team, already making it on top of the list. Lisa Newman team and Ashley Wright. Also, congratulations, Ashley, fairly new to the LAER team, so congrats. And then our top 5 by units, it looks very similar in New Hampshire. Each month that particular list doesn't change too much by volume versus units. Okay, let's take a look at our Florida agents and teams by volume. Congratulations to our top 10 in Florida. Congrats goes out to Laura, Ella Jean, Jeanette, the Lambert team, Team Ribello, James Lamongi, the Pedraza team, Giswaldo team, Stephen Wilson, and Joe Kudnick. Also, a congratulations goes out to our top agents and teams in Florida by unit sold. Congratulations to Laura, Joe, Ella Jean, Jeanette, the Lambert team, Team Ribello, James Lamongi, Giswaldo team, Pedraza team, and Steve Wilson. Congratulations. We also put together a top 25 company-wide overall list each month. We do one by volume and one by units. So congratulations to everybody that made either one of our top 25 lists. As always, our team will be sending out an email to the whole company with a blog post that contains social media pieces for all of these. So if you are on any of our top lists, top 25, or for any of the individual territories, please make sure to click on that so you can share and do a humble brag on your social media about your accomplishments in the marketplace. Let's take a look at overall where we are as a company. This varies a little bit each month. We took a look at our June closings. We did 227 closings at 128 million. last year at this time, our June was a little bit busier. So last June, 2023, we did 331 closings at 171 million. Now, that makes it so that we're down in volume and units year over year, 5 to 8%. We're still super hopeful. By the way, that's normal across the industry. So the industry in general, everybody is reporting figures that are a little bit lower than last year. And a lot of that has to do with the lack of inventory in many of our marketplaces. That, coupled with the higher interest rates, has slowed down the number of buyers in each marketplace. However, the National Association of Realtors is still predicting an overall increase in sales for 2024 versus 2023. So what that means is that we're going to have a very busy second half to the year. So our year to date, we're still very much on pace to do somewhere between 1.3 and 1.5 billion dollars in sales this year. Year to date, we've closed 1,216 transactions at 613 million. And compared to last year, which was 645 million this time last year, and 1,346 closings. So down a little bit, but still very optimistic that, based on what National Association of Realtors is reporting, that we're going to see hopefully some interest rate drops for the second half of the year. That, coupled with an increase in inventory, more houses for our buyers to choose from, we think it's going to be a very busy end of year. So I know it's the summer, but not going to have a lot of time to relax. What we have to do is dig in and learn about the new paperwork and new rules coming out as of August 17th, so that we are prepared for an extremely busy second half of year. By the way, we're also seeing a decrease in the number of real estate agents in general. So that means that not only are we expecting a very busy second half of the year, but you guys, the rock stars who stay in this business and treat it like a career, you're going to see more business from last year just by the fact that we have less real estate agents competing for the same piece of the pie. Like I mentioned, the National Association of Realtors is still predicting an increase year over year for sales, which tells us that we're going to experience our spring market in September. All right. So one of the things I wanted to spend a great deal of time on today is talking about the August 17th changes. We have on our LAER Agent Services site, we have already created a section with resources for each of the states that we do business in. We continue to expand and add resources for you guys to utilize as you navigate the changes. I am still a firm believer that this is not going to have a major impact in our business in any substantial way. That is my prediction. I think it's going to change slightly the conversations that we're having with our buyers and sellers. And of course, it's going to change the paperwork that we're getting signed by our buyers and sellers. So I want to kind of go over what you're going to see. Many of you guys have already heard all of this multiple times, but I can tell by the questions that come into our Happy Agent team that agents are still a little bit nervous about the upcoming changes. One of the things that doesn't help is that all of the states have been a little bit slow in getting the new forms out. So the new forms are trickling out in some of the states, but none of the states have already come out with all of the forms that are going to be used. So what is taking so long? Interestingly, I I called the Mass Association of Realtors last week, and I was curious, like, why does it take so long to update the forms? And I had a great conversation. The woman said, well, if you think about it, this was all of these changes are the result of a lawsuit. So they said, we're being extra cautious to make sure that our forms are on point so that, number one, we avoid potential litigation for our members, but also that we're not having to come out with multiple changes over time as we release the forms. So the forms are coming across the board, but we just have to be patient. So let's see, a couple things to go through, just an overall, some of the stuff to think about, and this is for just all of the marketplaces. What are we going to see in all of the states that we do business in? We're going to see new listing contracts, 100%. We're going to see new listing contracts that specifically spell out that commissions are negotiable. As well, the new listing contracts in the states, in each of the states, will have a section that spells out whether the seller of the property would like to allot a certain percentage for a buyer agent from the beginning of the listing. So there will be changes to the listing contract, and the big changes are the commissions and what the seller wants to offer as buyer compensation. And that they don't have to offer buyer compensation. By the way, many of you guys in every state have been receiving notifications from MLS letting us know that they are taking out any fields within the MLS that relate to an offering of compensation. So even though there will not be commissions offered within the multiple listing service, it does not mean that your seller cannot still offer a buyer agent compensation. So we will see updated listing contracts in all of our marketplaces. Next, buyer agency agreements. Now, some of our states were already required by law a buyer agency agreement. So some of you are very used to, for many years, getting a buyer contract signed when you were working with a buyer. However, many of the states we do business in did not mandate a buyer agency agreement. So this is going to be kind of a big change. In order to show real estate, you will have to have a buyer agency agreement. So all of the states are revamping the buyer agent contracts for the different states. The new buyer agent contracts in each of the states will basically say that the buyer agrees to pay for a buyer agent, fixed or a percentage. The contract, it'll be either a contract term, which is what we're normally used to in the states where our agents do get buyer contracts. Normally that buyer contract is for a fixed amount of time. For example, a 6-month contract that the buyer agrees to work with you for a fixed amount of time, let's just say 6 months. And that if they put a property under agreement within that time, you are due a buyer agent fee for that. Those contracts, all of the ones that we've used in the past, have always spelled out that that fee can be offset by a seller contribution. So we'll see new buyer agent contracts come out. Just like the listing agreements, the buyer agent contracts or buyer agency agreements that are coming out are going to make it clear that commissions are negotiable, they're not fixed. And there's also going to be a specific contract for showing one property. Because the new rules state that an agent cannot show a buyer a property without that contract, the buyer agent's agreement, then there needs to be a form that is just property specific for one showing. In other words, let's just say you receive a Zillow lead, for example, and you're going to go meet that person. You'll have to have that buyer sign a document, but it could be just for the property. And it just says that if you end up putting an offer on this property, this is the compensation that will be due to the buyer agent. Other forms that we're going to end up seeing. Number one, documentation that spells out if the seller is paying a buyer agent fee on the transaction. So yes, there's going to be a buyer agreement for the buyer. There's also going to be a seller or listing agreement that spells out the terms of the listing, but also then we have to look at the individual transaction. So the transaction itself is now going to be very clear about what the fee is for, especially for the buyer, and who is paying for it. So we have already seen this in Massachusetts. Many of you guys have been using Form 310. I'll bring it up in a second, but basically it's a document that spells out, you can make it as part of your offer as a buyer agent when you put in your buyer's offer, Form 310, that says the buyer is submitting this offer and is asking that the seller pay this amount toward the buyer agent commission. As well, we will also see transitional forms. These are not out yet, but what a transitional form is, that we're still using our old contracts. So like our old listing contracts, for example. So on August 17th, those, in order to comply with the law, we're going to have consumers sign a document, for example, that explains that commissions are negotiable and that they don't have to pay a buyer agent fee on a listing agreement. So 4 types of forms that all of us are going to see in every single marketplace is buyer agency agreement, a new buyer agency agreement, a new seller or a listing agreement, a new form that somehow gets incorporated into the offer/purchase and sale agreement so that the transaction is very clear about who is paying the buyer agent fee. And then last, a transitional form of some sort for transactions that have been listed prior to August 17th. As well, probably buyer agent contracts that were signed prior to August 17th, so that as of August 17th, you are in compliance with the law. So that's what we're going to see everywhere. What we're going to see everywhere is that buyer agency agreements will be mandatory if you're going to show a property that is listed by another broker. Some other things just to keep in mind, many of you are aware of this, but there was a lot of concern by our agents that work with VA buyers, because up until recently, VA buyers were not allowed to sign an agreement to pay a buyer agent fee. That was just unapproved cost that we could not charge a buyer agent fee. That has all changed. So the Veterans Administration has now allowed for the fact that the buyer, the VA buyer, can agree to pay a buyer agent fee. And by the way, VA, FHA, all of these mortgage programs have already made concessions, understanding that the agreement that is reached may include the seller paying a buyer agent fee. And in all cases, Fannie, Freddie, VA, FHA, the amount that the seller pays for the buyer agent is not grouped into the allowable cap of closing costs. So all those programs have caps as to how much a seller can pay towards closing costs for a buyer. Because just imagine somebody buys a house for $200,000. Say a buyer buys a house for $200,000. They did not want a buyer being able to ask a seller, well, pay me back $50,000 towards closing costs, because the cost can't be that high. So all of those programs already had caps, but we don't have to worry about that. All of that has already been accounted for. So all of the programs now, the buyer can ask for the seller to pay for their buyer agent fee, including VA.
Hey, Stacy, there's a great question in the chat
Yes.
from Roberta Fulford. She says, how are listing agents going to handle calls from buyers on their listings to show buyers a home? That's one question. And do they also have to have the buyer sign a contract, a buyer agency agreement if you're the listing agent on the home?
No, you won't have to have them sign it if they're not represented. So if you're a listing agent and you receive a call and somebody wants to look at a property, I would find out if the person is represented, because we have to be extra careful now, understanding that in most instances that buyer may have already signed a contract with somebody else. So I do believe we have to be extra vigilant when a call comes in on a property. Do you have a buyer agent agreement set with another agency? Because one thing that this will probably create is even more potential procure and cause cases, where a buyer potentially signs buyer contracts with 4 different real estate agents, and then who's due the commission. It's going to be very interesting. But no, if you're the listing agent and a call comes in and the person says, I am not represented, then you can show the property and you do not have to have that buyer.
So you're the listing agent, right? You're the
Yes,
seller's agent. Would you send out a mandatory agency disclosure saying you're the seller's agent and having the
yes,
buyer sign that? Is that the right protocol
yes,
for this?
absolutely.
Yeah. And then one of the things I'm wondering about, I mean, we're having this conversation, it's a great conversation, is as a listing agent, you've got a home on the market after April 17th. It feels like we're going to get double the phone calls, right? I mean, you're going to get a phone call from a buyer's agent saying, hey, is your seller offering compensation to my buyer, right? That's going to be phone call number one. And then phone call number two may or may not be, we'd like to see it. You know, it's going to be, there's going to be a lot of stuff going on with this.
100%. It's definitely going to be, we're trying to figure out different ways to make it so that you don't get that barrage of phone calls. I mean, imagine right now that you list a property and your seller has listed for $50,000 under market value because they want to sell it quickly. No real estate agent wants to field 150 phone calls. Is there compensation being offered? That's part one of it. Part two of it is, as a buyer agent, I want you guys to realize it doesn't matter whether the seller's offering anything. So under the new rules, I think in most instances, just in talking to our real estate agents, because already right now, right this second, our sellers don't have to offer a cooperating fee to a buyer agent. It's very rare that I see that happening. And I think that it's going to be very rare to see that happening moving forward as well. So, but even it doesn't necessarily matter if an offer of compensation is being made by the seller or not. Still have your buyer sign the agreement and put your offer in, subject to the seller paying for the fee. Interestingly, out in our Athol market, I've had 2 of our agents had instances where they were working with buyers, and the buyers put in offers on properties where the seller said they were unwilling to pay a buyer agent fee, because we're already seeing in some of the markets, there are definitely companies already offering zero cooperating fee. And in both instances, our agent put in the offer, subject to using the form 310, subject to the seller paying the compensation of this amount. In both instances, the sellers pushed back and said, no, we're not going to pay it. In both instances, the buyer said, okay, we won't buy the property. And in both instances, the transactions went back together a week later when the seller came back and said, okay, I'll pay the fee. So I think we might see some of that, but you have to be strong in your negotiating and know that it really does not matter what is being offered or if something is being offered. So you don't necessarily have to be the agent that makes that phone call. Interestingly, one of the things that we're going to see is weird little nuances. So for example, one nuance that I have seen in Massachusetts, and I don't believe this is a nuance that is also true in Florida. Massachusetts, they're saying, well, if the seller is only offering, let's just say that a buyer agent gets a buyer contract signed, and the buyer contract says that the agent is entitled to a fee of 2.5%. And let's just say the seller is offering 3%. According to the Massachusetts rules, the buyer agent cannot make that extra 5% because they have a contract saying they will get paid 2.5%. They cannot get paid 3% because that is what the seller was offering. That is not true in every state. It is definitely not true in Florida. Florida says you can negotiate whatever the agreement is, and they have a modification agreement for the document. So these are the weird little things that we're going to start experiencing throughout the summer. None of it is life-changing. I believe we have the best real estate agents around. You guys are super strong negotiators. And I think this makes our job even easier because now there's forms for us. Like, even in Massachusetts before, 3 years ago, there were a lot of people that would never write into an offer what they're getting paid on a commission for a transaction. Now it's like super clear that, hey, there's a form now. So Massachusetts has this form 310 that you can, as a buyer agent, complete and submit it with your offer and say, this is what we're asking the seller to pay towards the buyer agent fee. Florida just came out with some new forms. If you're a Florida agent, I believe it was June 25th, you received an email from me, and there was a little video from the Florida Realtor Association that said there's 2 new forms to consider. One is a compensation. Basically, it's kind of like the Massachusetts Form 310. It's a compensation agreement. So on every transaction now, there's going to be a compensation agreement in Florida that says this is how much the seller is paying towards the buyer's commission. So this is going to be a new mandatory form. They have 2 versions of it. One is the seller broker to buyer broker form, and one is the seller to buyer broker form. So if you list a property in Florida and the seller says, yeah, I definitely want to offer a 3% commission or whatever it is. I want to offer a 3% commission to any buyer agent that comes in. Then you're going to have the seller fill out this form in advance because they've already agreed to pay a 3% commission. And then the buyer who buys the property will also sign it. In some instances, the seller is not going to agree in advance to pay a particular fee for a broker or a buyer agent. So in those instances, it is going to be the buyer agent who makes sure that they get this other form signed, which is the seller to buyer broker, which basically says, hey, this offer is subject to you paying the buyer agent fee. By the way, both of these forms have a modification agreement. So in the files after August 17th, as we close transactions, you're going to have one of these forms in every file, every buy side transaction and every sell side transaction. And yes, you guys have asked me about rentals in all of the state. I have no idea. So nobody's bet in, from what I have heard, in each of the states, nobody has addressed rentals yet. So I think everybody's just trying to figure out how we're going to get the sales transactions. I have not seen anything come through yet in any of the states specific for rentals. So right now we're just talking about purchases.
Can
So
I ask one more question on this,
yes,
Stacy? So with these forms, having read, parts of the settlement agreement, I'm assuming the forms would not be uploaded into the MLS. They'd stay separate from the MLS. And some some of our super smart agents like Mark Tavener are saying, can we put in the MLS, we love buyer's agents? Any feelings about, how we use the MLS in this case?
I don't know.
Stacy, I've been, doing all these seminars, and I've
Yes.
probably 100 different, iterations of, can we use anachronisms? Can we do this? Can we do that? I'm saying be conservative, especially now. Everyone's going to be on the lookout for nonsense. And Craig, to your point earlier, the bottom line is the default is going to be a phone call, right? When you're the listing agent, you're going to get double the phone calls because you're going to have people calling you to find out information they normally wouldn't MLS. And I think for now, we need to settle into that a bit. And, let's leave the creative thinking for a little bit further down the road when all this kind of shakes out.
It's interesting that you say this, Craig, because one thing that I noticed is if you look at the Massachusetts MLS changes, just in the last 7 days, an email came out about the specific boxes that are being added and deleted from the Massachusetts MLS. So they're taking out the box that has the specific offer of compensation. But there's two new boxes. One box is no offer of compensation. And the second is no offer of compensation in MLS. And I was thinking that that could be their way of saying there's no offer of compensation in MLS, but there is an offer of compensation. So I don't know if that, because I'm like, why would you need two boxes?
And remember, MLS PIN is going through a whole separate settlement.
Yes.
NAR is as well. And that's a whole interesting subconcept.
Yes. So Sarah from our Athol office had a great idea that we'll start doing throughout the summer as more of these forms come out, like once a week, just doing an hour call where our team is available to answer questions. As one of the things I want to just stress for everybody is that we are as new to this as you are. So every time MLS, and remember that we're in multiple states, every time an MLS or a realtor association sends out an email, we get a barrage of emails to Happy Agent. What does this mean? What do I have to do now? We're figuring it out as you guys are. So as you see these emails come out, first read through the email and the form. That's my first piece of advice for everybody, because sometimes there's like a little video attached, and sometimes just reading the form, you feel better because you're like, oh, this makes total sense as you read through the form. So don't let your first reaction be like, hey, I better get approval from somebody. Hey, at the end of the day, is it all going to roll out perfect? Absolutely not. Are we going to have 100% compliance on 100% of the files day one? I doubt it. I doubt it. We're going to work with you guys. If a form is not signed, we won't worry about it. We're going to do our very best to make sure that we're as compliant as we possibly can be. And I think we'll be 100% compliant by fall. We'll just work it as we can figure it out with you guys. I want to do a quick tools overview. because really where you guys should be focused right now is what tools and resources do I have at my fingertips to make these new changes as simple as possible for me. So, couple things I wanted to point out that were just added. So we're going to be working at reorganizing our LAER Agent Services marketing section because we're adding so much stuff right now that we just have to figure out a nice, easy way to make it even more organized because there's so much. But we did add some new documents within LAER Agent Services. This is under the marketing, the very first link in the marketing section. Number one, we created a document on buyer agent commission, why it's important, offering the buyer agent commission, why it's important when selling your home. And it goes through the approved things that you can talk about, why a seller would want to pay buyer agent commission. Secondly, we created this understanding buyer agency, and this is like a little brochure about the new rules for buyer agency. And it explains exactly how the buyer agent contract works, etc. So go download those forms, customize them. We've added tons of new resources. I'm going to just go over for a second to the two places because there's just so much available on here right now. You go to laeragentservices.com and head down to guides, presentations, and brochures. And you will see the understanding buyer agency presentation. This is a guide for you to share with your buyers. And all of this is customizable. So you'll see a little table of contents. It talks about transparency, why you deserve to be represented, 80 ways that I work for you, how buyer agents are compensated. We also put this in. This is very vague because it's up to you guys. It's up to you guys to determine what you're going to get paid on a buyer agent transaction, but it is not a bad idea to have a few different offerings for people where they can pick and choose which offering they prefer. So all of these are meant to be, be customized by you. This is the brand new offering a buyer agent commission, why it's important when selling your home. So these are two brand new documents for you to incorporate into your packages. I'm not going to play this now, but we also created a 6 or 7 minute video called the hidden variables that impact your home's value. This is a 7-minute like whiteboard video that we paid a company to create for us. We wrote our own script, and basically it's for sellers. So basically it explains that there are multiple reasons why a seller should consider offering to pay a buyer agent. Most importantly, because the seller then is expanding their buyer pool, and the bigger the buyer pool, the more competition for their property, which drives the value up. So this just talks about the hidden variables that impact your home's value. It's a little bit long, but it's a fun video, and it takes the seller along a path where they see at the end that it's probably a good idea to be open to paying for a buyer agent. And that is on our YouTube station, the LAER, not our training station, but our consumer focused station at youtube.com/LAER Realty. In addition to that, for the last 3 months, we've been adding so many tools to our site. So we have new buyer presentations, new listing presentations, buyer guides, seller guides. We also have all these scripts that we created. So we have a Florida listing agent script for paying or offering a co-broke. So that is a script for our Florida agents to use as to why the seller should be paying a buyer agent. We also have same thing for all of our other states, which operate a little bit differently than our Florida market. So we have scripts, we have booklets. One thing that is going to change for sure is I believe if I polled our agents a year ago and asked how many of you have an actual buyer presentation that you do when you are meeting a buyer, I believe if I polled you all a year ago, I would guess that less than 25% of our agents had a buyer presentation. I hope that as we approach August, that when I poll our agents about who has a buyer presentation, that we are like way up there. 100% of you will need a buyer presentation because you're going to have to show your value to get a buyer to sign any document, any agreement. That's why agents had listing presentations. The reason agents did listing presentations is because we were asking the seller to sign an agreement. Many agents didn't have a buyer presentation because they weren't asking a buyer to sign anything in most of the states we do business in. We're just going to take them out and sell them something and get paid for it. We weren't showing all of our value because the buyer wasn't committing anything to us. Now we're asking the buyer to make a commitment, so you have to have a buyer presentation. Our buyer presentations are second to none. They're amazing. So go check these out. We've also added some green presentations. We have, if you focus on high performance homes, we have a high performance buyer presentation, a high performance listing presentation. Tanya from our marketing department has been even prettying these up more. So we're going to have some new versions of these presentations as well. But I think it's awesome opportunity. What's so wonderful about all of these changes is that over the last 20 years, I believe that real estate agents in general all get clumped in that if you're a real estate agent, you're a real estate agent. They're all the same. That's how our industry worked. The agents that did really well are the ones that were really good at articulating their value. I think that this is an amazing opportunity. That's why we're trying to give you every possible resource you would need to differentiate yourself, to show how valuable you are in the home buying or the home selling process, so that it's an easy transition. And no longer is a real estate agent a real estate agent. There's like different levels of real estate, and you guys are the best. We already have all the marketing pieces that talk about the value you bring to the table, but it's up to you guys to get out there and use them. It is not a valuable use of your time that when the MLS or the board or anybody sends an email out saying freak out about it. Everybody has to get the new form signed. So instead of worrying instead of worrying about anything, it's an opportunity to thrive in uncertainty, and we're giving you every tool you need to survive and thrive in the uncertainty. One other thing I wanted to show you is we keep adding resources to right next to this button, the guides, presentations, brochures. We also have a NAR settlement resources section where we keep adding as new stuff comes out, new forms, because there's like articles and all kinds of stuff so that you can start building your value proposition. Everything is here that you need to be super successful. Doesn't matter. You should be doing even more business after August 17th. So let's go back. we are already at the end and I have so many other things I want to make sure to tell you guys. So I'm going to just scoot through the rest of this presentation so we can get to some of the cool updates. But make sure you go kind of make a list of all the resources you have. And they're all at laeragentservices.com, but make yourself a nice list of every resource that you have and start digging into them one at a time. So on August 17th, you are 100% ready. All right, let's go back to our company-wide updates. As I mentioned, it's super exciting that we are now in Maine, and we look forward to adding an additional office in Maine by the end of the month. As well, I mentioned this last month, but our title company in Florida and our title company in New England have both had some exciting changes. Many of you have had the opportunity to meet Alma at our New World Title office in Wellington. She's getting out to all of the offices to meet you guys in our Florida market. I believe she did a great luncheon yesterday. Also, we have some exciting updates in our Coast to Coast closing office. We have Kat McCarthy joined our paralegal team, and Elizabeth Ambrosini is our new attorney handling all of like South Shore, Cape Cod. Elizabeth is amazing, and I know some of you have already started sending some closings her way. Make sure if you guys want to come visit us in Cape Cod, who doesn't want to be in Cape Cod this time of year? We are doing a West Yarmouth Cape Cod grand opening Tuesday, July 16th. It's a combined grand opening of our new Coast to Coast office with Elizabeth and LAER Realty Partners. The offices are adjacent to each other, so we're doing one big get together for both Coast to Coast and LAER next week. As a reminder, please be super careful of copywritten. This is like my monthly copyright photo warning. Do not use any photos that you do not buy and purchase, or do not like go off of Google and take images ever. We've had a couple interesting lawsuits that came through last year on that. So just be super cognizant of that. And then Craig, what do we got for updates?
I'll just keep this real quick because this is a great conversation. I'm just going to say this must be a wicked fun time, Stacey, to be a broker on. I mean,
oh, it's
I
amazing.
can't imagine how much fun you're having. Yeah, but you know, I will honestly say this: there's no place I'd rather be than here because we're nimble, we're smart enough. You know, we've got your leadership to be able to handle these things. So
Thank you
for everything you do. You got it, absolutely. So just quickly, I'm going to just throw into the chat. You know, a big part of what we focus on is education. Cape Cod and the Islands Association of Realtors is offering the green designation on October 3rd and 4th. I'll be teaching it down there in West Yarmouth, actually. And the price point is unbelievable. It's $79 for CCI AOR members and $149 for non-members. The class, usually when I teach it, goes for $250 to $300. So it's a great opportunity to get the green designation. It's full 2-day training on high performance homes, on building science from day one, marketing, valuing these homes. The valuation process is different. Then how to use this in the business. And we are, so there's 3 of us, Stacey, that have done the last 3 rewrites of the NAR green designation. We're doing one right now. We get funded every 3 years to update it. And the new content in the green designation is really exciting. And I'm going to say this to you, Stace, because you're actually part of the thinking, believe it or not, of the new setup for the green designation. So you're going to find in the new green designation, knowledge is not power, execution is. And one of the things that we're building into that is an accountability checklist that's built during the class with other green designated agents from what you're learning and how to turn that into execution. And that really was driven by you, listening to you over the last 5 years. So thank you for all of that. But it's a fundamental shift in the training. And I think there's a real value proposition here when you're working with buyers. that green designated agents really bring something special to the agent, to the buyers before, during, and after the transaction, particularly with tax incentives like the Inflation Reduction Act, which, once buyers buy the property, there's huge tax incentives to green up that home. So how we engage buyer agency, I think there's a really special place for the green designated agent, their knowledge, their competence, their ability to be able to execute and offer something very, very special and unique to buyers in all of our markets. So, get the green designation. I think it's going to be really great training. And I'm hoping by October 3rd and 4th, I'll be able to present the new green designation content. But even if we don't have it fully formed at that point, you'll be getting all the updates because I'm teaching it and working it. So I'll leave it at that.
All right,
Yes,
awesome.
the green designation applies to all states.
And by the way, Craig and I and the sustainability committee have been working on these buyer and listing presentations specifically for agents that focus on high performance homes. So we keep tweaking it, but I can't even tell you there's massive opportunity for agents that really embrace this, because basically we're building out this platform that allows the real estate agent to be an ongoing resource for their client, buyer or seller, for years to come, so that once the transaction closes, it's not the end of the conversation. It's just the beginning of the conversation. And we think there's ways to even incentivize so that you can continue to make money in other ways by referring great partners in the high performance space. So lots of good things coming.
And we're working on that right now, Stacy. Absolutely.
Yes.
Next LAER Sustainability Committee meeting too is the 24th at noon. Also, all of those brokers up in Hollowell. I have a seller down here that wants to buy a lot of land in or near Brunswick, and he's going to build passive house. So I need it to be a green designated agent. So if we have any Hollowell agents that are already green designated or are planning to be, contact me so I can send you a referral.
Awesome. Awesome stuff. As always, we're going to be adding to this as well, but if you need any one-on-one support, we're building out these little half-hour one-on-one meetings. So you can go to laerrealty.com/briefings. And these are like little one-on-one meetings with our staff if you need help with anything. Please don't forget to check out our newsletter each month. Once a month, we send out an internal company-wide newsletter, just letting you know what's happening within the brokerage, within the industry, cool tools and technology that our committees are working on. But also you get to find out what's happening in the lives of your fellow LAER agents, births and celebrations and accomplishments. So make sure to check that out. We do have some team members from coast to coast here, I believe, Mike, and I saw Elizabeth. Welcome, Elizabeth. We're excited to have you in West Yarmouth.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
And then Mike, Nicole, any updates you want to share?
I guess the big update is what we talked about for a good part of the meeting, buyer agency and the changes. We have been going to office and spoken to, dozens and dozens of agents, but I know the questions keep coming. So I put it out there at all the agency seminars, and I'll put it out there now. Call us or email us, text if you have questions, concerns. We don't care if it's a case we're working on or not. I had 2 or 3 agents call me over the weekend with questions regarding offers and new buyers they had. So I was happy to get those questions, but we're here for you. I know it's a transitional time and it's going to be tough, but the 30,000 foot view, I agree with you, Stacy, 100%. I don't think things are going to change that much. Day to day, there are going to be changes in your practice and procedure, and we're here to help you through that.
All right. Awesome stuff. Let's see. Want to get a quick update from our team in Florida. We have our Director of Agent Services for Florida, Farah, is on to give us some quick updates for our Florida agents.
Hi, everyone. I hope you're having a great day. We'll just jump right in and keep it nice and short. can you go to the next slide, or can I?
Okay.
Thank you, I appreciate it. First of all, we have quite a few new amazing things going on here in Florida. We introduced for the first time the Pride Preferred Vendor Program. This is something new that we're trying here in Florida. Basically, it is a quarterly paid vendor program so that we can create a little bit of exclusivity with our vendors so that they can have better engagement with our agents and our agents can get a better grasp of what is offered and have better connection with our vendors as well. And the coolest thing is that for agents of LAER, if they have a real estate adjacent business, they can be part of the Pride Preferred Vendor Program as well at no cost, with the exception, of course, of mortgages, inspection, and of course, we have a title company already. So that is super, super cool. The next thing that we have coming up, also very, very cool, we have a Florida regional Facebook group. We love being part of the larger LAER Facebook group. However, obviously, there are nuances to being located in different areas in the US. And so the regional Facebook group will focus more on the ongoings within LAER and within the real estate community here in Florida. And we have some very, very cool classes coming up in July. To start off, at the Port St. Lucie office, we are doing a tech bundle breakdown. Now, this is, in fact, very much based on the class that Ashley Gendro teaches every month. However, it will be in person. It will be more of a workshop format so that you can bring your laptops. We can sit and make sure that everyone gets through working through Real Scout, Boston Logic, and Isaac Contact together. And that's on the 19th. We're also doing a role play session. Obviously, the buyer broker agency situation and NAR settlement is on the tip of everyone's tongue, and everyone wants to know how to get through it. And I actually have to thank Wellington agents Ashley Ulay as well as Carolyn Brown for coming up with this idea for a role play session. It will be a brunch and learn more than anything, but it's going to be super cool because we'll all get to sit around together and learn how to role play presenting the buyer broker agency agreement. So that's going to be awesome. It's going to be agent led, and we are actually going to have breakfast provided by our title partner, New World Title. The main event, this class is actually Stacy's idea, and it's literally quite genius. So the idea was to canvas our agents and find agents that are tenured and highly successful and take a 30-minute sit down with them via Zoom and have a better understanding about how they achieve success on a day-to-day basis. This is going to be an amazing opportunity. And our first agent that is joining us for our inaugural 30-minute class in July is Roberto Ferrer Jr. He's been an agent for over 20 years. You know, he's got some checklists, some good habits that he's using day to day to be successful, and he's going to be sharing those with us on the 25th at 11. Additionally, New World Title, as a thank you to LAER, which is super awesome, they are hosting what we're calling the Title Takeover Challenge. This is going to be super fun. So basically, New World is going to have an idea of how much title business LAER refers them month to month, and the office in Florida that refers them the most will win a monthly ice cream social. Super fun. And congratulations to the June winner, which is LAER Wellington. Their ice cream social is going to be Wednesday, July 31st, 12 p.m. Just because it's at the Wellington location does not mean that everyone else is invited. So definitely come on down for that.
Awesome. All right, good stuff happening in Florida. That is the conclusion of today's meeting. I want to say thank you to everybody that stayed on a little bit later today, but lots of great things that are happening in all of our markets. And make sure to join us for the next sales meeting, which is right on the eve of the big changes in our industry. Although by August 14th, we will all be pros at all these changes. So look forward to seeing everybody on August 14th for our next sales meeting. And until then, have a wonderful summer. Thanks, everyone.